Hey, welcome to the Freak Show.
I'm Kristen,
And I'm Dancing David.
and we're here to talk about what's possible in a frequency-focused world.
Welcome back.
Hey, you're like born for this stuff.
Aloha, Kristen. How are you today?
Good.
Welcome to the first episode of the Freak Show.
Exciting stuff.
And welcome to all our listeners. Hey, everybody, it's David and Kristen, and we're doing the Freak Show every Friday at 3. And what is the Freak Show about, Kristen?
It's about frequency, all things frequency, and what's possible with a frequency-focused world.
Awesome. That's cool. And I was thinking we could talk about two things today. One is what we're going to talk about, and two is why we're even doing this. Does that sound like a good plan?
Sure.
All right. So let's start with the what, because you started that already. What is frequency?
So I guess it's really, really hard to describe what is frequency without going over an experience of being aware of frequency. So, do you remember a time when you were aware of frequency, like early on in life? Good, bad?
Well, as I was thinking about our show today, I was thinking about where I experience frequency in my own body.
Cool.
And I think that this is why I'm doing the show, because I want to reframe our whole culture and way of thinking about science to relate it to your body instead of relate to other things. But that's another story we'll talk about later. So fundamentally, I was thinking, well, what is cycling in my body? Because as an engineer, we use the definition of frequency as cycles per second or cycles per minute. So in your own body, you have beats per minute. So your heart cycling, ba-bump, ba-bump, is typically in healthcare known as beats per minute, which is very similar to cycles per second. It's a similar kind of thing, and both implying the concept of frequency, meaning how often does something happen, right? And so in your own body, you have many of those things, right? You have your respiration cycle, you have your sleep cycle, you have your bowel movement cycle, you have your heart cycle, right? So all those things have a frequency about them. That's kind of a very basic understanding of the concept of frequency as it relates to your own body. Now, I have an idea that you want to talk about it on more levels than that. So do you want to expand from there?
Yes, I do. I always do. But okay. I'm going to continue on with how you described it, because that's really cool, starting with your body. Mm-hmm. For me, I became aware of the fluid in my body. And with illness, I've been in and out of hospitals my whole life. So I simplified that to mucus in my body. So a thickness and frequency actually broke that up in different ways with a micro vibration. So not just the heartbeat, ba-bum, ba-bum. But if you think about a baby that's really sick and coughing and congested, if you hum that baby while you're rocking the baby, all of a sudden the cough goes away. What is that? If you're sick and you hum a really low vibration, like a really deep, you can break up mucus in your own body, which is amazing. And just something I learned through experience. Like, what is that? And then I attached it to, well, mucus in your lungs is pneumonia, is a cold. Mucus in your blood is congestive heart failure, is cholesterol, elevated cholesterol. Mucus in your urine is a urinary tract infection, kidney disease. Mucus goes all throughout. So I went to not just exploring frequency, but the fluid in our bodies and deuterium and what that means and how we can use frequency to actually break that up and filter it through.
That's cool. So let's frame this a little bit more for our audience, because this is our first show, and say that today you and I are both working in the healthcare field quite a bit. And so we will talk about our bodies and sickness and health and disease a lot. And I also want to say that over the course of the show, however long it goes, I think we'll also talk about fun things like music and dancing and all these other wonderful things about frequency that exists as that we experience as human beings. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. So let's go on with the body stuff a little bit more, I think, because I think for our show, what we want to do is really embody these things for people. So it's not just theoretical and ideas. So if everybody who's listening right now, you can, there's kind of two ways that I love to embody frequency in as related to what Kristen was just saying, which, and so if you just hum or, yeah, I find if you hum, that's the easiest way to feel the frequencies in different parts of your body. So if you take a deep breath and with us hum the notes of the scale of music, like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Hopefully you've heard that concept before of the scale. If you just hum those, you'll feel different parts of your body vibrating because of the different rate of cycles or the frequency that relates to different parts of your biology. Like Kristen was saying, different mucuses of different thicknesses. And let's talk about that a little more detail later. But let's just do this practice together. So we'll take a deep breath and exhale slowly. And if you close your mouth, and if you can go, that's a little different than singing it. So let's try it again. It might take a few times. That was actually probably the first time I've done it that way with the whole scale. But
Did
just
you
try that.
notice like which note hits which part of your body?
Totally.
You
Right?
did?
Yeah.
Cool. I
So
would
let's,
love to hear like what you, yeah, to see
all
if,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's do it again together for practice and then we'll talk about it. Okay.
Okay.
So here we go. The moment of stillness. Just gather up some breath. So you have some breath for humming. And we'll go. So I was humming hopefully loud enough so you could hear me. Kristen, were you also doing it?
Yes.
Yes. Cool. So that shows you that this concept of frequency is not just an external thing. It's not just how the radio signals get to us or how the sunlight gets to us or how this plant is different from that plant. It's your body is resonating at certain rates and different parts of your body resonate at different rates, which is what Kristen was saying earlier. So do you want to expand on that, Kristen, now, or we can dive deeper into it? Or you were saying, you were asking, yeah, sorry, you asked me the question about where I felt it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So, mm, mm, I mean, your do, that's what's cool about frequency and scales is they can start at different places. So even though I started my do at do could also start at do. It could also
Right.
start at do. So every one of those do's is a different frequency or a different note, as we call it in music. Um, and those will be in different places in my body. So where was it for me? And this is interesting because it kind of gets at the point of natural resonance, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But so the question is, why did I start where I started? Probably because that was just easiest for my body to embody, literally, right? So where do
Yeah.
I feel that? I feel it like in here. How about for you?
Yep. Yep.
Like my upper chest and lower throat, I would say.
I would almost even say thyroid. I bet there's something to the thyroid if we double check the science. That's so
Awesome.
cool, David.
Yeah. So then the next note up. So that like jumped into my mouth. Like the vibration jumped into my mouth from my throat.
And behind your ears too.
And then the next one. So it's definitely resonating in this part of my body
Yep.
from here.
Yep.
And for people listening at home, it could be different places for you because might be a different scale. Like I said, you might have started at a different place. And obviously your body is different than our body. So it's not like one is wrong or right. What we're trying to share with you here is that there is a connection between sound or vibration or frequency and your body. And we know that from dancing or from a baby crying or but when you can know it to help yourself be healthy or heal, then it takes another level in your life, right? So let's go up further. So is like here for me. I can feel the so. That's interesting. The la, the higher one.
Goes down again.
For
Yeah.
me, did it do that for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So I ran out of tissue in my body, right? That could vibrate at that rate up here. So it went back to the tissue down here that is more flexible and ability to vibrate at a higher rate. That's the way I'm thinking of it. Because my skull obviously is very thick and dense. So for it to vibrate at a higher rate takes more power, right? Which is like what you were saying before about the mucus. The lower frequency hum will break it up because it has more power in a lower frequency, which we could talk about in more detail later. But I think that's what happened just now. To me, that gets higher again in my body. I don't know. For you?
Yes.
So cool, right?
Yep.
So that's a fun little experiment. Look forward to seeing all your comments about this on our YouTube channel, which is going to be hopefully, maybe we haven't figured out yet, maybe the Freak Show, if we're going to stick with that name. Give us feedback if you like that name, everybody. You like it? Okay.
Yeah, I like the Freak Show because I feel like people that are tuned into frequencies or naturally nudge to look deeper into it in some way or feel a little bit misfit. So Freak Show is kind of a cool name. I like it because it embodies like frequency and a little bit of outliers there, which is cool.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's so interesting on so many levels because when we talked about the name Freak Show, I was like, well, freak is cool because it's an outlier around the edge, right?
Yep.
And then I thought back to my own life where geeks or nerds weren't cool for a long time, but then they became like the cool thing, right? With the TV show. What's that TV show with the nerdy group of people? Big Bang Theory is the one I'm thinking about.
Yeah, Big Bang Theory.
And then, of course, all the Facebook engineers, right? Facebook is this huge popular company and it's a bunch of engineers or geeks, right? So being geeky became the thing. So I'm hoping as a result of our show, being freaky will be the cool thing to be next in our culture. It might take a few years, but it's kind of cool, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. So did you want to, I've been talking a lot. Do you want to say what else you'd like to talk about?
I'm thinking, since we're talking about the body, yes. I did want to bring up something when I was younger. I got bloody noses if I was around fluorescent lighting. And I don't know how many people have had like a biological response to frequency where they realize like that is interesting, but not just what's happening inside our body, but also what's happening outside of our bodies epigenetically is really fascinating too. And not only in a negative way, I also used to experience the light between the trees, how it would sing a certain song, which was just amazing to experience, like a tree song like that through the language of light. Like that was amazing. So there's a lot of positive too, when you're hypersensitive. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, my wife is pretty sensitive too, so it's interesting you're bringing that up. We talked about the other day about being tuned in and what does that mean? So would you say in your world that you're potentially more tuned in and that has positives and negatives to it?
Yes.
When you say more sensitive, I'm trying to frame it in a positive way by saying you're tuned in, meaning more conscious, or your sensitivity to frequency is higher than other people. And like you said, that has positives and negatives, right?
I was trying to frame it in a positive by not just saying, yep, bloody noses from
right, exactly,
and chronic pain and all those things. You also get all the good stuff too. Right. Yeah, you can choose what you tune into, which is really nice.
Right, which is a perfect segue for, I think, the last segment that we'll talk about today. So the show and this is something we need feedback on. How long should we talk? Obviously, we could talk for a long time about this, but
Yeah.
maybe for our first show, let's go back to the why. Why are we doing this? Which you just mentioned. I interpreted you just mentioning by saying, what did you just say?
That you can choose what you tune
You
into.
can choose what you tune into. Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's like the why here for me. And what I mean by that is, the law of attraction and what's that guy Joe Dispenza and all these people have been around for years talking about how what you think about, you bring about, and what you attract is through your vibration and stuff. And I've been studying that for years. Obviously, I'm sure you have too. The question is, how do we really embody that, and how does that work? Or at least the question for me is like, how does that really work in the universe or on the earth? And so, where am I going with this? So I think frequency is the answer to that, meaning the tuning in. So if you want to listen to 98.5, you tune your radio to 98.5, and that's what you hear, right? So if you want to be rich, you have to tune into the frequency of being rich. If you want to be positive, you tune into the frequency of being positive, and you can actively do that, like Kristen was saying before. But let me bring it around to my why, and then love to hear yours. So I was actually dancing today with my wife, which is one of my favorite things to do. And why is it my favorite thing to do? Well, because for me, music and movement and resonance between those two things is blissful. It's the zone, it's the flow that a lot of people have been talking about for years. And so my why for doing this show is to share with people that we might all have our different blissful zone frequency states, and it's okay. Um, and more importantly, to say that if we realize that we can choose that, like how do we get to be choosing it? And that it is that choosing of the right one for you that feels good, not just thinks good or your neighbor expects you to be good, but that feels good to you is what's going to bring it to you. And it is and therefore it is the true calling or nature calling or God's calling or what you're really here to do as a human being on earth in this lifetime, to shine your light. From the song from my childhood, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, right? So the question is, well, how does your light shine? And I think to what Kristen was saying is because you're tuned into the light that is your natural light or your resonance or your frequency, right? So that's my long-winded answer to why am I doing this? Because I want to live in a world where I can shine my light, and I want to show other people an easy way for them to shine their light, because that's ultimately what we're here for. So that was my answer. How about you, Kristen?
I love your answer so much that it's going to be hard to talk about mine because it's very similar, actually. So being extremely tuned into frequencies and realms and all of those things, I did grow up in a church that limited the way God showed up for me. Big time, big time. Like, don't feel too much, don't see too much, don't know too much my whole life. And it was pretty demonized. And pressed down, like, don't do that, don't be that, don't hear that, don't communicate that way. So talking about frequency instead of talking about instead of talking about it in a way that's limited by a social construct of religion or a science modality, it's limitless, really. When we just get rid of everything, get rid of all of the constructs and say, we're going to talk about frequency in a way that includes everyone. And it's inclusive. It's not exclusive to any one camp. It's not, there is a golden thread. Universal truths are universally true. And there's something inside me that knows that I'm connected to everything that ever was and ever will be. And I know that to be true about everything that's alive, everyone that's alive. So if we can tap into that part of ourselves and give ourselves permission to experience all of it, then there really isn't a greater way to commune, in my opinion. What else are we created for? I mean, the God I know is a lot bigger than what I've been led to believe. So my life's work is to invite everyone to the party because it's a lot different.
That's so awesome. Yeah. And as you were saying that, I'm thinking, well, okay, there's a lot of theory in there, and we've all had those kind of experiences. So how can I make that more real in my life? That's what I'm thinking as you're saying that, while trying to be present so I can tune into your frequency. Uh, and I'm looking at our backgrounds, and I'm looking at nature, and I'm looking at the waves, and I'm looking at the tree, and I'm like,
Yes.
nature doesn't struggle. nature
Nope.
doesn't have, nature continues to thrive year after year, day after day, with through all the cycles of the cold and the heat and everything. It continues to be connected and vibrant and alive, right? And so, and it doesn't have all these, what you call social constructs, right? And so the fact that nature is doing that, and we are nature, we are from nature, with nature, connected to nature, we thrive with nature, then why not for us too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's super cool.
So awesome. Cool. Is there anything else you want to share today, or just invite people to come and to comment on our video and come back next week and hear more and tell us what we want to talk about? I mean, I want to talk about dancing and health and social contracts and all those things. How about you?
Same. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. So maybe there's a message we could leave our listeners with, which it could be something like, your practice for this week could be sitting still and tuning into different scales, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and feeling those in your body as a way of starting this awareness of frequency in your own experience. How about that?
Yeah, that's a really cool segue. I think people can play around with that and then at least admit that it's there. You know, you can't deny that that's there. So, what is that?
Right. Yes. Hmm. Okay. That's a great ending. What is that? We'll talk about that next time on the Freak Show. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.